My name is Nick B, and let's get into this week's futures overview. So, starting with the economic forex calendar, Monday we have FOMC member Waller speaking. Not much else. Tuesday, nothing really going on. Wednesday's the big day, FOMC meeting minutes. Thursday, we have unemployment claims along with flash manufacturing PMI, flash services PMI. And then Friday, we have Fed Chair Powell speaks along with the Jackson Hole Symposium. So the main catalyst for this week is going to be FOMC. Now let's take a look at kind of the inflection points we're at and what we might take on. Now, this has been an interesting run up here. A lot of data points are pointing that the last time we saw a 7 day consecutive run up was back in 2022 or October of 2023. But I believe it was a little bit earlier. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it wasn't in June. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so for ES for the S&P must have been in 2022, 2023. But with that said, let's go over the pivot points that I'll be eyeing in terms of upside and in terms of downside. So very nice push up here. The bottom is in. We're at the first inflection point, and that target is 5,600. If price can manage to get above 5,600, we have more than enough room to come up to 5630 and 5630. If and when price gets above that, that seals the deal towards 5660, 5680, really 5700, and then get us to 5720 and we're off. We're probably going to be going towards 5740, 50, 5760, 80 up until 5800. End of the year, I believe a lot of people are targeting 6000. We'll see. Now, in terms of downside, I think FOMC can also be the perfect catalyst that we may come down after being pretty overextended for the last 2 weeks. We might come down to get a retest of some supports. It's maybe unlikely, but a zone that I've been eyeing on ES is 5490. 5490 back in June when we had our contract rollover, it held as a very nice support for us for a few weeks until we made all-time highs. And then finally, when we finally got below that level and flushed, we made our lows at 5120 on ES. So if we can manage to come down here towards 5490, or even my daily 20 EMA agrees with me of this area being a support zone of 5470, if we can come down there for a retest and end up bouncing out of there, wonderful. Then there should be more conviction that when we get above 5600, the move is going to continue on higher. Now, if we end up below 5500 or 5490, more downside is definitely to come, but I'm really not swayed to the downside. I can't wrap my mind around why the markets would want to now trend lower. It just, we're not there. We're not there yet. Breaking ES down to the 4 hour. Oops, we can get a closer. Oh my, what's going on? Clear the drawing set. We can get a closer look at some of the lower highs and lower lows that price action has formed here. And let's see. So the 20-day is at 55.20, where we briefly came down to 55.35 area. Now, if we revisit this area again, I mean, wow, look at this. It's pretty overextended. There's really not much support, maybe around 54.70 to 54.90. I mean, that's going to be that baseline support. If we manage to break below it, so be it. We're probably going to head lower. Below 5490, my eyes would really turn to 5430, 5400. Below 5400, I mean, we're just going to be retracing all the higher lows that we made, such as 5370, 5330, 5350, 5330, down to 5300. But again, that is so out of whack to think about, especially with all the data that we've been seeing and one heck of a recovery back up to the upside. So again, very close to that inflection point. I'm really eyeing 5,600 for more upside into the end of this week. Even with FOMC coming out, I expect us to get a bit of a pullback. That pullback holds, it gets bought, back up we go. Right now, we're pretty much just chopping around. There's not much for us to do just yet. If we can manage to get above the session highs, well, yes, definitely has the room to then revisit 5,600. we'll see. We'll see. I'm more interested in Monday's pre-market action data rather than really attacking much here at the moment. Let's take a look at NQ. And again, I'm going to keep this brief, kind of to the point. So with NQ, let me clear this up. Similar story on the daily. You can see the 20-day, we're well above it. That is over at 19,171. Our 50-day is at 19,260. The middle ground for it is 19,200, 19,240, and that was a super important level that we broke out of last week when we did, and thanks to the the unemployment data, excuse me, thanks to that data, we were able to just take off and not look back. The question of this week is, are we going to retest those breakouts and continue on higher, or are we going to completely ignore them, go for our inflection point, and continue pushing up higher? We have a bit of a gap to fill at 19,009. And really, what seals the deal for us out of this downtrend on ES would be 5630. For NQ, it would be 20,100. So if at any point into this week, the Nasdaq can break and hold above 19,720, we have a really good idea that we're heading towards 20,000, but really 20,100. Get us above 20,100, that exposes us up to 20,200, and really 20,200 is last call until our next lower high areas of 20,600. That should be a nice run up. Again, FOMC, we don't know what the data is going to be exactly. We don't know what Powell has in mind, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an important one because we know that it's not so much pertaining to the inflation data, but more so we want to know how the labor market is doing. And again, with this jobless claims, that the unemployment claims that we had last week, that helped us get that push on Thursday, helped us get that squeeze. Um, that's pretty bullish so far. So we'll need to see what comes along on Wednesday. Other than that, I mean, at the moment, we can say this is a little bit of dead man's land. Are we going to retest the levels that we broke out of and go higher, or are we just going to break out and go higher? The reason I'm not putting too much emphasis on downside is because I logically cannot wrap my mind around why we would do that. Now, the possibility of the Fed pushing those rate cuts into, past September, okay, maybe the market's not going to like it, but we're not there yet. We need to see what those what the data says, what the numbers are, and until then, we're gonna trade what we see. And lately, all we've been seeing is breakouts and higher highs and higher lows on the lower time frame. So, with that said, let's have a solid trading week ahead. VIX is pretty muted still. VIX is at its levels of 1480, I believe. We also have the 10-year yield TNX CGI on TOS. We fell off a bit, right? We're at 38.92, so that's also a good sign for the growth sector. Now it's about, what's going to give first, which price points and which floors that we're trading in between are going to hold as support or act as resistance. With that said, stay bullish, have a solid trading week ahead. And again, let's see what Powell has in store for us. It's going to be an interesting week. Cheers, all.